I'm Sophia Evans, 28, and I just cut the power to my sister Madison's wedding to Michael Hale. The wedding that used to be mine. Madison and my mom, Diane Evans, stare in disbelief as every screen in the ballroom goes black, then white letters blaze across the screens. Diane Evans has been having an affair with Michael Hale, Madison's fiancé. The gasps of the guests overpower the music, the band stops playing mid-note, the photo booth freezes on the same line. I'm in a black suit with one envelope. Madison's bouquet of flowers suddenly sag, Michael drains white, and my mom, Diane Evans, stares speechless. The entire wedding falls silent, even my mom can't speak. Before I tell you what led to this seismic moment and how I made the entire wedding fall silent, drop a comment to tell me where you're listening from. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any gripping family revenge stories. I grew up inside a brand, not a home. In our house, image had the last word. Mom ran charity galas like a conductor runs an orchestra. She set dress codes, flower colors, talking points, and the angle of every camera. Dad worked each room like a board meeting that never ended. He courted donors, clients, and people who liked to be seen. The Evans Foundation fed the press clean stories about our values, and the city ate them with a silver spoon. We had commandments the way a church has commandments. Poise, deference, perfection. We spoke those words more than we said love. If something went wrong, it was not a problem to discuss. It was a crisis to manage. We did not ask, "How are you?" We asked, "What will people think?" We lived by that question and slept under it like a ceiling. Madison, my sister, fit this world as if Mom had designed it just for her. She was glossy and bright and always knew when to laugh. She had a face that looks good in every photo and a mind that waits for a script. She never had to fight to be seen because being seen was her gift. I was the other one. I liked bold colors, strong opinions, and questions that did not have easy answers. I cried when I cared. I got quiet when I was angry. That made me too much, which in our home meant a risk to the brand. In a normal family, difference can be a flavor. In ours, difference was a threat. The brand came first. We passed it down like an heirloom. We polished it. We guarded it. And I learned very young that the brand had more rights than any daughter in that house. I learned to move carefully and to speak like someone who might be quoted. I learned that mistakes were not forgiven, they were edited. If a story did not flatter the family, the story did not get told. I became the buffer without anyone saying the word. When a task threatened to wreck Madison's schedule, it slid to me. If the florist needed a pickup, I drove. If the donor list had errors, I fixed them at midnight. When two people in our orbit were angry, I made the calls until they were not. I soaked up conflict like a towel at a spill, and when the floor looked clean again, someone else got the thanks. There was a rule that no one spoke but everyone knew. I could be near the spotlight but never in it. If a photo needed balance, I was the person holding a coat just out of frame. When a gala needed an extra hand, I was the hand. If I asked for credit, I was told I was making it about myself. If I asked for help, I was told I was dramatic. If I set a boundary, it sounded to them like sabotage. They did not freeze me out. They thanked me when I vanished and scolded me when I asked for room. My job, unpaid and unnamed, was to smooth the path for people who were already walking on velvet. I showed up early, left late, and disappeared in the middle. I carried an extra pen and a spare safety pin. I learned which door staff used when the main hallway was blocked and which driver would show up even in rain. The easiest way to be tolerated was to make other people's lives easier and ask for nothing. So I learned to do excellent work without being seen. I could read a run of show and fix a place card fast. I knew who to call when the lights flickered and who to nudge when a delivery stalled. I listened when people shared too much and I kept notes. The work made me skillful and the lack of credit made me quiet. That mix became a strange gift. I could move whole parts of an event without my name touching any of it. I did not yet know how much power that would one day give me. Some wounds are loud. Mine were steady and small, like drops of water that wear a groove into stone. Madison's freshman gala dress vanished from my closet the night before her event. I had saved for that dress with shifts at the community center. When I asked for it back, Mom said, "You know how to do without, she needs it." The next day, the photos showed Madison glowing in my dress. I learned that need in our home meant who the camera favors. During my junior year, my scholarship award night fell on the same date as a last-minute donor dinner. I had earned that scholarship with quiet hours, cheap coffee, and a stack of index cards in my pocket. Mom hugged me, told me I was wonderful, and asked me to help with seating at the dinner. Dad said the family brand had to take precedence. I watched my classmates walk the stage on a live stream that froze every few minutes. At the donor dinner, I carried a tray of programs. When I objected to small thefts like that, I was called too emotional. When I stayed calm and pushed back, I was told I had a tone. Madison, who could do no wrong, thanked me in a speech for being helpful. The room applauded her grace while I stood in the shadows holding a stack of place cards. I took notes on timing. If I pushed at the wrong moment, I lost ground. If I waited and moved at the right moment, I could change the path of a night without anyone knowing. That was my early education. Not math, not science, timing. And the lesson at the center was plain: in my home, being visible brought risk. Mastery meant moving without making a scene. I met Ryan on a build at the community center, the same place where I had spent after-school hours to hide from home. He led a crew of carpenters and volunteers. He had calloused hands, strong forearms, and a laugh that did not come easy but stayed when it arrived. He explained things without talking down. He asked me what I wanted to learn, not what I could fetch. He liked that I carried a pencil behind my ear and that I wore boots I could ruin. He treated work like work and people like people. We measured studs and hung drywall, and he showed me how to find the center of a span with a piece of string. He brought extra gloves in case someone forgot theirs. When a teenager made a mistake, he did not scold him. He said, "Let us fix it together." He was not a man who thought a camera made a moment. He was a man who thought a finished wall with no gaps was worth a smile. After a few Saturdays, he asked if I wanted to get tacos. We sat on the curb and ate out of foil and talked about the city. I told him about the gala world without naming names. He told me about his mother, who cleaned houses and could fix anything with a needle and thread. He said he liked that I looked people in the eye. I liked that he did not think silence meant agreement. With him, I did not feel like a risk to be managed. I felt like a person, present and whole. I brought him to one small event. He wore clean jeans and a pressed shirt. He held doors, said thank you, and shook hands without playing a part. I saw some faces tighten. I filed that away, not fear, information. Ryan proposed in a small garden that we had helped restore on the edge of the neighborhood. The path was lined with low lights we had bought in a discount bin the month before. He tucked a ring into a tiny paper box he had made himself. He knelt, not for a photo but because it felt right to him. I said yes. We hugged and laughed like kids who had sneaked into a theater and found the best seats. It was quiet and ours. When I told my family, they smiled like hosts greeting a guest they had not planned for. Mom pivoted at once to logistics: venue, guest list, attire that would be advisable, seating grids, and which photographer would understand our look. Dad shook Ryan's hand and said we would make it work, but there was a pause before the word work, the kind of pause that told me a cost was coming. Madison clapped and called it sweet. She asked to see the ring and said it was tasteful, which in our house meant safe and small. The congratulations came wrapped in conditions. We could do it if we followed guidance. We could choose as long as the choice fit the brand. The wedding moved inch by inch from a promise between two people to a stage for the family. The ceremony became a show. Suddenly there were conversations about sponsor tables, photo rights, and which step and repeat backdrop would flatter the family name. The vows, which should have been the heart, felt like props. I felt the old machine begin to hum around me, the same engine that had turned my childhood into a run sheet. I told myself I could steer it. I told myself love would make room. I picked my battles and let other things slide. I did not yet see that the fight was not about flowers or seat maps. It was about who got to be visible and who would be used to hold up the frame. Being the utility daughter trained me in a trade no school offered. I knew vendors by name and by habit. I knew which baker would answer a midnight text, which florist could swap a color palette in an hour, which photo booth company had the fastest printers, and which band leader would keep a crowd dancing without ego. I had interned across the foundation communications desk. I had watched how video feeds from cameras got routed to screens, how a shared gallery pulled in every image, and how a single permission could flip a whole show from private to public. I kept copies of contracts and timelines. I read the fine print. I watched for clauses about public scandal and brand safety. I tracked who had administrator access and who had view-only access. I learned that every flawless event was a stack of small choices made by people in back rooms. I learned where the back doors were. I kept quiet records, names, permissions, and the little habits that make systems open for those who know where to press. I learned that the person who controls the schedule and the screens controls the story everyone remembers. I also learned to talk less than I knew. People tell you more when they think you are there to help and not to judge. I learned to ask for clarity in a way that made others offer it. I saved emails that others would delete. I wrote down dates and times even when I did not know why I would need them. I tested my memory by repeating aloud where cables ran and which laptops had the master login. I did not do this because I planned to strike. I did it because in my family, the truth rarely saved you, paper saved you. Screenshots saved you. The day would come when I needed every bit of it, and when it came, I would not be guessing. I would be ready, quiet as ever, with proof in my pocket and the map of the room in my head. Mom called it help. "Let us take tasks off your plate," she said, using the soft voice she saved for donors. A week after our engagement, she consolidated vendors, promising it would free me to enjoy being a bride. I knew that tone. It means smile while I take the wheel. Emails shifted in a day. The florist wrote to confirm our new palette, copying Mom's planner, Kendra Ray. I had not changed a color. Kendra added Madison to every thread for efficiency, and soon my name slipped off by accident. I did not argue. I saved every message, small erasures stacked like coasters under a heavy glass. The band list changed. Our songs were marked not on theme. The menu dropped our street tacos and added 3 pretty plates that tasted like air. The bar plan drifted from local beer to a champagne brand tied to a past gala. When I asked who approved the swaps, Kendra smiled and said ambience. I wrote that down. I did not fight in the open. Scenes feed people who like to watch you lose your place. I filed emails, saved revised contracts, and set alerts on my card. At night, I called vendors and asked calm questions. Who owns the booking? Whose name is on the deposit? Who holds the administrator login? Each answer went into my notes. On Tuesday, Madison posted a calendar screenshot in our family chat. It showed a sponsor walkthrough at my venue. I went to the site to confirm counts. The sales director beamed and said, "We are so excited for Madison's ceremony." I kept my face still. She pulled up the file. The date was the same. The package was larger. The owner of record was still me, but the title line read, Evans, Madison, and Michael. If I had raised my voice, I would have been called unstable. "Looks perfect," I said. "Would you print the summary so I can share it with family?" She handed me a sheet with the date, the package, the amount, and the new names. I folded it and slid it into my bag the way you hide a passport when you do not trust the border. That night I called Mom. I did not say the word stolen. I asked about the sponsor walkthrough and the name on the venue file. She sighed the way she does when a waiter makes a small mistake. "You are being oversensitive," she said. "It is the same date and the same plan. Madison is helping. You two have always wanted to be close." I let silence sit between us until she filled it, which she always does. "This tone is not helpful," she added. "Family harmony, Sophia. We cannot have drama when people are investing in this celebration." There it was again, the quiet demotion. My wedding had become a celebration. My concern had become drama. If I cried, I would prove their case, so I did not. I said, "Thank you for clarifying," and ended the call. I told Ryan about the venue language, the color changes, the menu drift, and the bar sold to a sponsor. He asked if I wanted to move the wedding to something small and true. I said I wanted to try to keep the plan. I did not yet understand that calm was not the goal. Ownership was. Contempt moved from whisper to stage. Dad took me to lunch with white tablecloths and a long wine list. He asked me to consider a better match. He did not say working class, he said fit and impression and comfort. "Ryan is a good man," I said. "We are getting married." Dad looked past me at the waiter and said, "I know you believe that." Later, in a cousin's kitchen, someone giggled about steel-toe boots and place settings. Two aunts traded a look when Ryan said he had to leave early for a job site. Madison called him sweet but unpolished, as if she were grading fruit at a market. Each comment was small enough to deny and sharp enough to cut. I did not argue with anyone. I wrote down the dates and their words and who stood nearby nodding. I would need the pattern later. One evening, after the tasting that Ryan and I chose with care, I stepped away for 2 minutes to wash my hands. When I came back, he stood alone under a string of patio lights. The air smelled like basil and bleach. Mom and Madison stood 2 steps away, heads tilted together, hands folded in the same rehearsed way. Their faces were soft and sad, the way you look at a house you plan to sell. "We were just telling Ryan," Mom said, like she was sharing a kindness, "how much we respect him." Ryan did not look at me. He stared at the knot of wood in the table between us as if it held a map. Madison touched his arm. "It takes real love to let someone go," she said. "If you want Sophia to have the life she deserves, you can be the man who gives it to her." They were not throwing him out. They wanted him to walk himself to the door. Mom added, "This is not about class, it is about fit." He stood straight. He did not argue. "I hear you," he said. He kissed my forehead and left before dessert. We did not talk in the car. At home, he leaned on the sink like he had carried lumber up 3 flights. He said he would never make me choose and would not be their sport. I wanted to pound on their door and shout. Instead, I washed my face and wrote 3 lines. They cornered him. "They think I will fold. Do not fold." The next morning, the rehearsal plan hit my inbox. Subject: friends and family toasts, Madison and Michael. My name was not on the program. The slideshow said Sisters Forever, but every slide was Madison. In tiny corners were hands pinning a veil, holding a hanger, lacing a shoe. My hands. "We streamlined the story," Kendra said. "It flows better." I counted to 8 until my pulse slowed. Outside, people walked dogs and carried groceries and lived without scripts. That night, the rehearsal dinner was in a low room with a wall of mirrors. Tables were set for Madison and Michael. My place card sat near a speaker stand. Mom took the microphone, smiled at donors, thanked sponsors, and lifted her glass toward the press. Then she looked at me. Her voice went soft like the first notes of a lullaby. "Some unions are built to last," she said, "and some, bless them, are learning experiences." A thin hum of polite laughter moved like a draft across the carpet. The mirrors threw it back. She continued, "I say this with love, some marriages would never last anyway." The words landed with a gentle thud that shook my bones. People laughed again, louder, because they did not want to look like they had missed a joke. Madison's mouth made a sorry shape and then a smile. Cameras flashed. Someone at the head table tapped a fork against a glass to make it seem like this was toasting and not judgment. I held the stem of my water glass and watched my knuckles pale. I did not move. I did not give them a picture of a woman crying at a party. I turned my face a little so the angle would read as calm if anyone looked. Ryan stood up from the far end. He had stayed for me. He left for himself. He walked out without slamming a door, and the dignity of that exit felt like a coat I did not deserve. I watched the door close. I let the noise flatten. I felt the last thin string that tied me to their approval snap inside my chest. It did not hurt the way I expected. It felt like air. On the ride home, I did not speak. My phone shook with messages from numbers that only text when they want a favor. They wrote, "So proud of you for taking the high road." They wrote, "You know your mom loves you, right?" They wrote, "We cannot wait for Madison's big day." I turned the phone face down and sat in the dark. I went to my desk and opened a new note with a blank title. I typed, "Make them watch themselves." Then I typed, "Do it where they care." I looked at both lines until my breath slowed. I thought about the rooms where my family felt most at home. I thought about the levers that make those rooms move. Donors, screens, schedules, narratives, contracts, staff who know when to bend and when to hold. My rage did not flare and burn, it cooled into a shape I could carry. The next morning I made coffee and moved in a straight line. I compared contracts and circled places where my name had been replaced. I marked fees changed without consent. I listed vendors who would answer my call and truths I could prove. I warned no one. I saved a copy of the rehearsal program with my absence in bold. I took a screenshot of the slideshow that turned me into helpful hands. I wrote down Mom's exact sentence and the time she said it. I took a photo of the room, of the mirrors, of the glass that caught my still face. I did not need to post any of it, I needed to build with it. I kept working my job, answered short emails about napkin shades, ate simple food, drank water, and slept. I texted Ryan that I loved him and that we would talk when there was breath. He replied with a heart and the word always. We both knew always had to shrink. Love cannot fix contempt. Clean plans can make contempt face itself. A woman can be quiet for two reasons, because she is afraid or because she is measuring. I was measuring. I measured who would sit in the ballroom. I measured which people still believed Mom's voice more than their own eyes. I measured how a room turns when the screens change. I have seen it happen at 1,000 dull events. People follow light. People follow a title card. People follow what flows through speakers. People think truth is whatever stands on the stage. By the end of that week, I stopped asking any of them to see me. I was done asking for room. My new job had one line: build a mirror they could not look away from. I waited. I watched the calendar, I marked who held which keys, then I turned their stage into a place where they would be forced to face what they had built. I did not feel brave. I felt awake. The rehearsal rooms smelled like polish and hot lights. Mirrors lined one wall and doubled every face. I stood near the service door and watched Kendra's team wheel out my seating chart and slide in a new one with a thicker border and a logo that read Madison and Michael. My name did not appear anywhere. I did not touch the paper. I counted place cards and noted who had been pulled close to the head table and who had been pushed toward the exit. Screens warmed above the bar. Sisters Forever flashed in looping gold. The first images were harmless: 2 girls on swings, 2 girls with backpacks. Then the pattern set. Madison in the center, framed by flowers, with a pair of hands at her veil, her train, her bouquet. The hands were mine, my bracelets, my nail color, always cropped at the wrist. I had become a theme: seamstress, dresser, fixer. Streamlined storytelling, Kendra said. It keeps the focus. She tapped her tablet and cued that rhythm again. Madison in light, my hands in service. I did not argue, I watched the watchers. Some smiled without seeing it. A few frowned, then smoothed their faces when they felt the camera on the room. That is the language of my house: edit the truth until it flatters, then demand praise for the polish. Programs arrived in cream. The heading read Friends and Family Toasts, Madison and Michael. My name did not fall anywhere between those words. I folded the program and slid it into my bag, not as a keepsake, as a record that the rewrite had been printed and handed out. Guests arrived in waves of perfume and practiced hugs. Donors kissed cheeks. Mom directed servers with the smile she used for reporters. Michael checked his watch at steady intervals. People who live on optics also live on patterns. Toasts began. A friend praised Madison's kindness. Someone told a ski story that ended with a helicopter photo. Laughter rose and fell on cue. Cameras panned from the couple to Mom, because that is how these nights work: the bride, the groom, and the person who curated the scene. I stayed near the service door. From there, I could see the screens, the head table, the exit, and the mirrors that reflected everything. I could read a face by the set of a shoulder. Mom lifted the microphone. The air smoothed like fabric under an iron. She was at home. "We are so grateful," she began, voice wrapped in velvet. "For this couple, for this family, for every friend who stands with us." She raised her glass toward the cameras, then toward the donors' row. "Some unions are built to last," she said, and laughter trembled at the edges because everyone likes to feel included in a joke. "And some, bless them, are learning experiences." Smiles spread that were not smiles. People performed approval because that is safer than being the one who missed the cue. I marked those faces like pins on a map. Mom turned to me. "I say this with love," she said. "Some marriages would never last anyway." She said it lightly, and the room did what it has been trained to do, release a neat ripple of amusement, and looked to Madison for tone. Madison pressed a hand to her chest, arranged a graceful sorry, and then smiled to assure the room I could take a joke. Cameras flashed. A fork tapped a glass to make humiliation sound like celebration. I set my water down because I did not trust my fingers to stay even. I turned my face a fraction so the angle would read as calm in photographs. I would not give them the image of a woman falling apart. I would give them a woman who had learned to stand still when waves pass, so she is still on her mark when the water slides away. Laughter drained. Silverware clicked. Someone murmured, "So brave," and someone else, "So generous," and I understood those words were not for me. They praised a performance that protected the brand. Ryan stood from the far end. He had stayed because he respects people. He left because he respects himself. He walked without hurry. He did not look at the head table, and he did not look at me. He looked at the door. It opened. He went through it. The door closed. The room pretended not to hear, and every ear heard. No one called after him. A cousin whispered he might be parking the truck. An aunt said he was unwell. Dad started to rise and sat again. Mom lifted her glass to catch light. Inside my chest, something finished breaking with a click like a lock when the key turns the last degree. This is where people expect a scene, tears, a plea, a woman shrinking so the room will forgive her for existing. I did none of it. I breathed in for 4, held for 4, and exhaled for 6. Control feeds on reaction. I starved it. The next toasts landed like static. Words piled on words, and none reached me. I watched the slideshow in my own hands tie a ribbon, pin a veil, carry a train. In our house, you get called selfish for wanting to be present in your own life. I watched the edges of the room where staff moved like quiet planets no one notices until they are missing. Dessert passed like penance. I declined. I did not want sugar. I wanted something I could use. Heat makes a flare, cool makes a blade. I waited until applause softened and bodies rose to mingle. Then I moved. By the soundboard, extra programs lay in stacks. I took another and slid it into my bag. Kendra stepped into my path and touched my elbow as if to guide a jumpy volunteer. "Are you doing okay?" she asked, eyes already scanning her list. "I am doing exactly as expected," I said. She smiled at the surface of it and moved on. On her screen I saw one word, seamless. I left last. The mirror by the exit showed my face from a distance, like seeing a stranger on a station platform and knowing she is about to leave. My chin was level, my eyes were quiet. I nodded once. Outside, the air was cool and honest. I wanted to call Ryan, and I did not. I would not pour raw grief into a phone and listen to it echo. I walked home. I passed the community center where we had hung drywall. I rested my palm on the brick and took one slow breath, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. Then I went upstairs and sat at my desk. The light from my phone made my hands look like they did in the slideshow. I opened a new note and typed 2 sentences, make them watch themselves, do it where they care, not threats, instructions. I pictured the cable path from a laptop to a switcher, from a switcher to projectors, from projectors to faces trained to turn toward light. I knew those paths the way other people know the turns to their childhood home. I pulled contracts from a drawer. I circled my name where it still existed and marked where it had been erased. I highlighted clauses with words like brand and morals and association. I checked timestamps on emails that moved my date and my money to someone else's title. I sorted screenshots the way a builder sorts nails. I did not send a message. I did not announce a plan. I drank water. I ate plain bread. I set an alarm. I lay on my back and watched the fan until sleep found me. In the dark, I woke with the picture of Mom's hand on a microphone. In the morning, I stood under hot water until the muscles along my neck unclenched. I dressed in quiet clothes. I tied my hair in a real knot. I opened the note and added a third line, use what they built, then a fourth, stay cold. I was not planning a scene. I was drawing a map, not hoping for kindness. Building a machine. Anyone who has lived in a house like mine already knows this is the path that makes sense. I reached out to no one. I muted the group chat. I did not reply to messages that said, you know she did not mean it and you are overreacting and let us talk this out. Talking it out with people who count your silence as consent only gives them more consent. I put my phone face down and my notebook face up. By afternoon, a calm settled that felt like grief after the crying ends. Not peace, a clear room. I set down the pieces so I could see how they fit. I wrote names, I wrote dates, I underlined proof and timing, I wrote screens, sound, feed, code, then I drew a small square and wrote one word inside it. Envelope. The click inside my chest returned not as a break now but as a start. A key turning, a plan beginning. Their line, your marriage would never last anyway, had given me something they never meant to give. It gave me done. On one side was asking to be seen, on the other was making them look. I stepped across with both feet. I did not look down, I did not look back, I did not shout, I did not cry. I planned. Revenge is not a storm, it is a building. You lay the foundation, you set the beams, you run the wires, and you wait until the frame holds. When the weight is right, you flip the switch and let the light do the work. That is how I began. I said the truth quietly so I would not flinch when I heard it out loud. My mom, Diane Evans, was having an affair with Michael Hale, who was engaged to my sister. When that sentence first formed, my chest tightened the way it does before a fall. I wanted to swallow it and pretend I had imagined it. But people who did not know each other kept handing me the same bones of the same story. A florist's assistant mentioned that Michael had booked after-rehearsal suites with an older brunette. A delivery driver from the caterer said he saw Mom and Michael slip out of a service corridor minutes apart, twice in 1 week. A nervous intern from Kendra's office whispered that she had flagged a calendar block labeled D&M afterparty, attached to Michael's email and to my mom's private address, not to the foundation inbox. 3 small sparks. I did not wave my hands over them. I cupped them from the wind and went looking for fuel. I did not confront them. In my family, anger is fuel for the story they love to sell. If I confronted Mom, she would turn calm while I looked wild. If I begged Madison to listen, she would look wounded while cameras recorded her grace. So I kept my mouth closed and opened a notebook. I wrote 4 words at the top of a clean page: proof, timing, delivery, consequence. Those words were my plan. I drew a list of places and people: the Harrington Hotel and the Westgate Hotel. The Glass Plaza garage where the gate reads plates. The private email my mom uses when she does not want the foundation server to hold a copy. The company that runs the ballroom screens and the live stream that feeds the gallery and the picture stations. Names: Elena Ruiz in hotel operations, Marcos de Leon, a night manager, Jules Ortega, a careful freelance technician, Rena Cho, a writer who asks for documents before adjectives, 4 corners for a frame. Elena remembered me because I had once helped her restore lights during a gala when a breaker failed. She pulled key card logs for the dates I named: 3 nights at the Harrington, 2 nights at the Westgate. The pattern was quiet and relentless. A card in my mom's name opened a room. 7 to 18 minutes later, a card in Michael's name opened a room on the same floor. The next mornings, both cards pinged the elevator within 30 minutes of each other. Elena said, "Be careful." I wrote the dates and the exact times on a clean sheet so I could read them without shaking. Marcos told me which lobby monitors showed camera feeds that anyone can see if they know where to sit. He told me the angles and the hours when the traffic would cross. He did not give me recordings. He told me where to point my eyes. I sat in a chair with a paper cup and pretended to read messages. When my mom crossed the frame in a dark coat, I lifted my phone and took a photograph of the monitor. 7 minutes later, Michael crossed the same frame. I took another. I saved every image with the date and the minute in the file name, and I wrote down which chair I had used and who sat near me. I did not need secret doors. I needed patience. Next, I gathered the parking entries. A friend in building services printed the logs from the plaza gate for my mom's sport utility vehicle and for Michael's small silver coupe. On paper, it looked like nothing, which is how truth often looks. Entry within 10 minutes. Exit within 30 minutes, again and again across different nights and different hotels. I masked the plates down to the last 3 characters and circled the times. Patterns that dull do not lie. When I could run my finger from a date to a face to a plate without lifting it, I called Jules. He arrived with a neat tool bag and quiet shoes. We cleared my table and built a simple storyboard in pencil. First frame, a white title in black letters: Diane Evans has been having an affair with Michael Hale, Madison's fiancé. Then the order. Keycard screenshots with the dates circled, lobby stills from the public monitor, parking entries with the time stamps marked. Last frame, independent sources, keycard logs, lobby camera stills, parking gate records. No music. No voice, no flames, just 30 seconds of clean sequence. I stored the files like proof I would need to show a careful mind. The originals lived in a folder I set to write once so the system would not allow changes. I mirrored that folder to a small solid-state drive that never touches the internet. I wrote a paper chain of custody, who gave each item when it was given, where it lives. I took screenshots of email headers when someone sent a document. I sealed paper in a large envelope, taped the seam, and signed my name over the tape. This was not for court. This was for the moment when liars pretend to forget. Paper remembers. While the proof took shape, I took back ground they had stolen. I opened a new bank account so any refunds or chargebacks tied to my original deposits would land in my hands only. I set alerts on my card so any attempt to move my bookings would ring my phone the moment it happened. I downloaded the contracts for the venue, the band, the florist, the photo booth, and the projection company. My name sat as owner of record on each. I highlighted the parts about public scandal and brand protection. If the family wanted to build their house on image, then image would be the wind that tore off their roof. I built a quiet archive of the theft of my wedding. I saved the email thread that moved my rehearsal to a different title. I kept the calendar screenshot where my name vanished and Madison and Michael took the slot. I kept the slideshow that cut my face down to hands and the printed program that forgot me. I did not plan to post any of it. I planned to send it to people who make decisions when money and trust are involved. Then I mapped the room that would become my stage. The Harrington Ballroom runs from one show laptop on a rolling cart. A cable from that laptop feeds a small switcher that sends the picture to 2 large projectors. A second cable from the switcher goes to a small box that creates the live stream for the share gallery. The live stream does not live only online. It also feeds the picture stations by the wall, the step and repeat frame that prints a note at the bottom of every photograph, and the sponsor slideshow that was set to publish during dessert. One cable can redirect a whole story if you know where it ends. Jules wrote a tiny program that waited for 8 characters to be typed on the show laptop. When those 8 characters appeared, the screens would go dark for less than 1 second, then our reel would play. When it ended, the last frame would freeze in place. There would be no scrubbing and no skipping. An operator could yank a cable, but by then the room would already have read the words and seen the faces. The passcode looked like a harmless mix of letters and numbers. No one would notice it on a screen or hear it on a keyboard. I made backups for the backups. The reel lived on a second flash drive labeled Logo Bumper, which is a name people expect to see on a cart like that. I printed a square scan code that linked to a mirror of the reel on a simple page with no name and no comments. I put the square inside the envelope too. If the show laptop failed or someone pulled a plug, the master of ceremonies could scan the square with his phone and cast the reel to the projector in seconds. We tested the cast on my own television and on a borrowed projector. Each time the image filled the screen, sharp and plain, I set the outside clock. I called Rena Cho, who writes about rooms like these without selling her soul. I told her I would present evidence of a private affair that created a public conflict of interest. I said the proof was mine to share and that no one's safety was at risk. She asked for the time, the place, and the exact words on the first frame. She scheduled a short post to publish 10 seconds after my passcode would be typed. Her caption would be spare, evidence presented mid-reception, board notified. Statement pending, no hashtags, no shouting, just a record that the record had been shown. Then I prepared the envelope. It held 3 things: the toast card for the master of ceremonies, the passcode, and the printed square scan code labeled "If the screen freezes, scan and play." The toast card held one sentence that sounds like it belongs at any wedding. "Before we celebrate, we thank those who kept this couple strong." The passcode sat beneath it. Under the passcode I wrote, "Type on the show laptop after you read the sentence." At the bottom I printed, "Cleared by Diane. In our world that line opens more doors than a key. Consequence would make the mirror bite." I wrote a formal complaint to the compliance officer of the Evans Foundation. It listed names, dates, and locations. It explained the conflict without drama: a woman in leadership and her daughter's fiancé in a secret relationship while funds, favors, and influence moved through shared events. I attached a folder with the evidence and a short timeline. I set the message to go to the full board list 60 seconds after the passcode would be typed. I did not want early whispers. I wanted the board to learn when the room learned. I drafted messages to every corporate sponsor whose name would appear on the gallery and the program. I attached the title frame and the timeline. I quoted the clause that allows them to pause association when brand safety is at risk. Those messages were set to send 2 minutes after the reveal. I wrote to the general manager of the venue to tell him that the step and repeat frame and the picture stations used design art from my original Save the Date. I attached the original files with their dates and my name, and I wrote a short rights notice he could tape to the picture stations. "This asset is under rights review. Printing is paused." He would not like the mess. He would like a clear order. I looked up Michael's company and pulled the public filings to make a short list of investors. I wrote a brief note that said an affair with a family leader had been shown during a public event and that a morals clause review might follow. I attached the title frame. That note would go out 3 minutes after the passcode. I was not loud. I was thorough. I called the sound technician assigned to the wedding. I asked him to mute all microphones when a short video ended except the one on a floor stand near the first row. I told him the family wanted a quiet moment. He said yes, the way people in his job say yes when a request is small and paid. He texted me a photograph of the floor microphone and the mark where it would sit. I drew a dot on my map where I would stand to reach it without walking toward the head table. If I chose to speak, I would speak from a clear place and I would say only what I had planned to say, no more. I wrote a phone list on paper because phones die when they are most needed. I wrote the after-hours numbers for the venue manager, the head of security, the picture station operator, the 2 electricians who know the projector cart, and the conference desk that can cut power to a wall. I slid the list into my jacket pocket. I changed every password and turned on 2-factor authentication. I revoked access to my folders. I muted the family group chat. I told the director at the community center that I would be unreachable for a day, and I gave her 1 word to text if something there needed me. The last part of the plan was my body. Nothing holds if your hands shake. I built a small routine and kept it like a promise. I drank water every hour, 2 hours before the event, I ate a little chicken and a piece of bread. I wore a black suit that fit me clean and flat shoes that would not slip on polished floors. I practiced 3 boundary lines until they lived in my voice. If my mom tried to pull me aside, I would say, "I am not available for sidebars tonight." If my dad tried to manage optics, I would say, "Please direct your questions to the evidence on the screen." If Madison begged for a private talk, I would say, "This is between the truth and the room." I said each line out loud in my kitchen until they sounded like weather. On the morning of the wedding, I woke before my alarm. I checked the reel on the flash drive. I watched each cut and every pause. I tested the passcode on my spare laptop and then erased the test. I slid the envelope into the inner pocket of my jacket and a second flash drive into the outer pocket. I put the solid-state drive with the master evidence in my desk at home and locked the drawer. I texted Jules one word, "Ready." He sent the same word back. I set my phone to silent and moved through my small kitchen like I was setting up a room for someone else. I wrote one more note and folded it into my wallet behind my license. "If you hesitate," it said, "remember the rehearsal mirrors. Remember the slide that cut your face down to hands. Remember the sentence, 'Your marriage would never last anyway.' Remember Ryan walking out because he would not be their sport." I did not plan to read the note. I only wanted its weight to sit against me like a hand between my shoulder blades when the time came to stand. I reached the Harrington early and walked the room like any guest. I looked at the projector cart and the show laptop. I looked at the little box that switches the picture and the small box that sends the live stream to the share gallery and the picture stations. Staff taped wires to carpet and tucked battery packs under black cloth. The air smelled like long-stem roses and cold metal from the vents. Behind the head table stood a stack of printed programs that did not include me. I touched the top copy with one finger and let it fall closed. The room shone like a showroom. I knew where the wires hid. Trevor arrived with his folder and his smile. I stepped into his path and set the envelope in his hands. "This segment is cleared by Diane," I said. He nodded like a man who has heard the password and can walk through any door. He opened the envelope, read the sentence once, then read it again out loud with the small lift that makes a room lean forward. "Before we celebrate, we thank those who kept this couple strong," he smiled. "Nice touch," I said. "Type the code on the show laptop when you finish the sentence." He said, "Of course," already moving toward the cart. I found my mark near a column to the left of the stage. From there I could see the primary screen, the cart, the master of ceremonies, the head table, and the first 2 rows where the donors sit. Jules stood by the cart with one hand resting on the metal edge. He tapped the cart twice, our small signal that the program on the show laptop was awake. I slipped my fingers into my empty inner pocket and felt the smooth lining where the envelope had been. That empty space reminded me that the key had left my body and now lived in the room. I kept my phone on silent and face down. I did not text nor an anchor. I did not need it. The anchor was the work. Planning is a kind gift to your future self. It does not ask you to be brave in the final second. It asks you to be steady for all the seconds that lead to the last one. The hardest part was refusing the softer story when the room looked like a family portrait. I saw my mom in a dress chosen for cameras, smiling toward donors with both hands around a wrist. I saw Madison framed by flowers and 100 eyes, already shining for a record she believed would last forever. I saw Michael check his watch and then the door. For one thin breath, I wanted to put the envelope back into my pocket and let the night run on its rails. Then I remembered the mirrors, the slideshow, the sentence, and the way Ryan walked out with his head high. That breath burned and then it passed. What I had built was not a tantrum. It was a quiet machine. It held the key cards, the lobby monitor stills, and the parking logs. It held the passcode, the flash drive, and the square scan code. It held the emails and the contracts and the brand safety clauses that would turn on the people who loved them. It held the scheduled messages to sponsors, the formal packet to the board, and the simple briefing to investors. It held a sound technician ready to mute microphones so no one could grab the story first. It held a sign the general manager could tape to the picture stations to shut them down without a fight. Guests found their seats. The chandeliers hummed. The projector fans sighed. I let my hands hang at my sides and kept my chin level. The envelope sat in Trevor's folder. The lie sat over the room like a ceiling. I stood in my black suit and rode the rail I had practiced into my lungs. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. Under the count, one sentence weighted like iron in a sheath. You canceled my wedding. This is the last thing you cancel. Everything was set. The room did not know it was a circuit, but I did. The plan did not need me to raise my voice. It needed me to stand still and let it work. That was the final rule I gave myself as the lights softened and the master of ceremonies lifted his microphone. Stay cold, stay still. Let the truth run along the wires I laid and make them watch themselves. I arrived 20 minutes before the guests were seated, which is the exact window when a ballroom feels like a stage waiting for actors. Staff darted around with trays and tape, testing lights, polishing glassware, and murmuring into headsets. I walked in like I belonged because in a way I did. The booking was still in my name, even if they had stolen it. I took a slow lap as though I was admiring the setup, but really I was tracing my escape routes, my sightlines, and the locations of every piece of equipment I had studied. I positioned myself stage left in partial shadow, not hidden but not obvious. From that spot I could see the primary screen where the reel would bloom. I could also see Jules at the switcher cart, already in place, pretending to check a cable. When our eyes met, he tapped the metal chassis twice, our small signal. My heart thumped once, hard, then settled. Trevor, the master of ceremonies, looked harried but eager to please. I approached him casually, handed him the envelope, and said the line I had rehearsed. This segment is cleared by Diane. His shoulders released the way people's do when they hear a name that carries authority. He slid the card into his folder. He read the line under his breath. Before we celebrate, we thank those who kept this couple strong, and I heard him repeat it once more for rhythm. I told him, when you finish the sentence, type the code on the laptop. He nodded without hesitation. To him, it was one more harmless instruction in a stack of cues. Then I turned my attention to the crowd as they entered. I noted where the donors and board members were seated, rows 1 and 2, center, directly facing the screen. The society press lined the center aisle, cameras ready. My mom sat at the head table, radiant in a dress the color of champagne, her hand draped over my dad's arm like she was anchoring him. Madison was framed by white lilies and tall candles, bouquet resting on her lap. Michael checked his watch, restless as if the night was already running late. I breathed slow, my anchor steady. You canceled my wedding. This is the last thing you cancel. Trevor, the master of ceremonies, lifts his microphone. The band leader looks my way and I give the small hand signal we agreed on. The music fades like a tide going out. Conversation softens. I can hear the projector fans hum. Before we celebrate, Trevor says, warm and smooth, we thank those who kept this couple strong. He turns toward the cart and types the code on the show laptop. 8 small taps, enter. For 3 heartbeats, the screens go black. The chandeliers keep shining, but the room feels darker anyway, like the air itself has leaned forward to look. Then the title card arrives, white letters on a dark field, clean and impossible to miss. Diane Evans has been having an affair with Michael Hale, Madison's fiancé. No music, no voice, the reel begins. First, key card logs, dates circled in red, room numbers visible. The times stack like tracks on a train schedule. My mom's name, Michael's name, same floor, minutes apart. I hear a fork clink once, then nothing. Second, still frames from the lobby monitor. Diane crosses the frame in a dark coat. 7 minutes later, Michael crosses the same space. The timestamp glows in the corner, faces clear, bystanders blurred. I watch the room read the screen the way a classroom reads a sentence together. Third, parking gate entries, 2 lines on a printout. The last 3 digits of each plate show, the rest masked. The times cluster in tight pairs. In, out, out. The pattern is dull and sure, which is why it hits so hard. The last frame freezes, independent sources. Key card logs, lobby camera stills, parking gate records. The light from the projectors washes over the lilies and the tablecloths and the faces that have always judged me. The room does not breathe. I do not blink. I keep my hands at my sides and let the evidence speak for me. Madison's bouquet loosens in her hand. Her wrist goes slack. The stems slide a little and catch as if the flowers do not want to fall but have forgotten how to be held. She looks from the screen to Michael and back again. Her mouth opens and closes with no sound, like she is looking for a line that used to be there. Michael turns the color of paper left in a drawer. He does not blink. He tries to make his jaw move like he is chewing, but there is nothing to swallow. His eyes do not leave the word fiancé on the screen. When people fear a lie, they look away. When they face the truth, they freeze. He freezes. My mom does not touch her glass. She does not reach for my dad. She places both hands flat on the linen as if she can hold the table still while the room tilts. She forgets to blink. I can see the tiny jump of her throat, then nothing. The woman who polices everyone's image has nothing to say to her own. My dad does not look at me. He looks at the donors in the first rows. His mouth thins. He is measuring, not feeling. I know that look. He is counting which promises will be delayed, which favors will be called in, which board member will take his call tonight. He forgets he has daughters. He remembers he has a brand. The room shifts its weight. Forks stop in midair and do not land. A whisper starts and dies because there is nothing to add to what is already on screen. Phone screens light, then drop back to lapse. People are used to noise when a scandal breaks. Silence is stranger. Silence is heavier. Tonight, silence belongs to me. I stand at my mark, back straight, hands at my sides, chin level. I do not smile. I do not cry. I breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. The power flips without a sound. They taught me that whoever controls the screens controls the story. I let their lesson work on them. I do not speak. Not yet. The band leader sees my hand signal and cuts to silence. House lights lift to a soft work level, bright enough to catch faces clean. Cameras love even light, so do consequences. The sound technician mutes every microphone except the floor stand near row 1. I know where it is. I plan to reach it without walking toward the head table. Collateral points start closing like gates. The step and repeat printers stop pushing out happy frames and begin to print the title card instead. Guests who were posing for keepsakes receive paper with the same sentence that fills the screens. They hold the proof in their hands. At the picture stations, the overlay swaps to my plain frame. Every tap to print returns the same message. This asset is under rights review. Printing is paused. I wrote that sentence for the general manager myself. He reads it now, frowning, then nods and tells his staff to tape it up. Online, the live stream mirrors the reel. The share gallery updates to the same frozen frame. People watching from across the city do not ask what happened. They see it. 10 seconds later, Rena's post publishes with a neutral caption, evidence presented mid-reception, foundation board notified, statement pending. No hashtags, no opinion, just the record carrying my timing forward. Authority pings start popping at the head table. The Evans Foundation Board receives the compliance packet I scheduled. I can see screens light around my dad and 3 trustees as reply all messages multiply. My mom stares at her place setting like the words might climb back onto the plate and disappear if she waits. They do not. The venue general manager moves to the cart and speaks quietly to the photo staff. He posts my printed sign on the step and repeat. A few guests try to argue. He points to the notice and shakes his head. The room begins to learn there is no fast spin tonight. Screens, printers, gallery, and posts all say the same thing. I built it that way so no one could pivot to a safer angle. The system carries the truth forward even while the people it names stand still. I walk to the floor microphone near row 1. I do not go toward the head table. I stop at the taped X the sound technician sent me. My hands hang at my sides. The room is so quiet I can hear the soft tick of the projectors and the slow breath of people who do not yet know what to do. You canceled my wedding. Consider this the last thing you get to cancel. If you are looking for a conversation, it is on the screens and in your inboxes. Eyes drop to phones. Heads turn to the frozen frame as if it might change if they stare long enough. It does not. I will not be discussing this privately. I hand the microphone to the sound technician. He lowers the fader. I return to my mark beside the column. I do not look at my mom. I do not look at my dad. I do not look at Madison. I stand where the cameras can see me, where security would have to take the long way to reach me. I have nothing else to add. The system is speaking now, the way systems do when you set every part in motion and step back. Silence holds. Then the whispering begins, not toward me but toward the head table where the story used to live and where it no longer does. The venue general manager steps to the photo booth, reads my rights notice and nods to his staff. Official photography is suspended pending review. The step and repeat lights dim. The printers stop spitting out smiles. People glance at their hands like the room has taken something back from them. At the head table, a trustee leans toward my mom and shows her his screen. "Emergency session," he mouths. Another board member types a reply with 2 words I can read even from here: "Suspension pending." My dad reaches for his wine and does not drink. He looks like a man counting exits in a burning theater. Michael's phone buzzes again, then stops. He reads a message, closes his eyes, and swallows hard. I recognize the last name when he lifts the screen, one of his investors. Mr. Kwan stands from row 3 and says, "We will be in touch about the morals clause." He sits. No one argues with a clause. Sponsor emails land. Phones light around the donors row with the subject line. Pausing planned posts awaiting clarity. The gallery screens freeze on the final frame. I do not gloat. I do not address the head table. I keep my hands at my sides and let the systems carry the weight I built for them. When a truth is heavy enough, it does not need a speech. It only needs gravity. By morning, the board of the Evans Foundation posts a short statement on their site and sends it to the press. Diane Evans is suspended pending review. No ribbon words, no soft fog, just the sentence standing alone. The same board that always smiled at her now speaks like a clock, clear, exact on the hour. Donor pledges freeze. People who once begged for seats at her table suddenly need to revisit commitments. The event calendar grows thin. A partner charity writes a careful letter asking to rescind a naming gift linked to our family. They do not want their children's reading room to carry the Evans name while the story is burning this bright. I do not gloat. I read the letter twice, then I set it down. In her private groups, Mom tries to swarm the story the way she always has. Soften it, stretch it, ask for grace while holding the mic. But the chats turn to read only. Friends who once praised her poise now send one-line replies. Some do not reply at all. The woman who taught me that image wins every fight is learning what happens when the image breaks first. Reporters call the foundation office not our house. That is new. Control is sliding away from the kitchen where she once wrote every script. The board hires an outside firm to review contracts and travel records. They ask for a log of hotel nights around key events. They ask for a list of staff who may have seen patterns and stayed quiet. Those staff are told they can speak without fear of losing their jobs. Mom loses the power of silence, which was always her favorite tool. I see her car drive past my block twice that afternoon. She does not stop, she does not call. For the first time in years, I do not feel pulled toward the old center. I let the car go. She made a brand into a home. I had to leave that house to breathe. Now the brand has no roof and the house is open to weather. She taught me the rules of that weather. She never thought I would use them. At night, I sit with a cup of tea and read the board's statement one more time. It does not make me happy. It makes me calm. A sentence can be justice when it closes a door that should have been closed long ago. The venue tells guests there are technical difficulties. People pretend to believe it for exactly 10 seconds, then start collecting coats. Half the room heads for the lobby where the picture stations still hold my title frame. No one wants a souvenir now, they want distance. A wedding is supposed to make a circle around 2 people. This one draws a circle around a lie and leaves the couple outside it. Madison stands in a small cluster of bridesmaids, white lilies wilting in her hand. Her maid of honor leans in and whispers, "He was with your mom," not with cruelty but with shock, as if the words taste like metal. Madison shakes her head once, slow, like she can scatter the sentence if she turns far enough. Then she stops moving. The dress that was supposed to make her shine looks like a costume that belongs to a different person. I do not feel triumph. I feel a cold kind of pity for a woman who let our family hand her a script and never learned to read her own. Still, I do not step toward her. My job tonight is not comfort. My job is the truth. Michael tries to speak to her and cannot get the first full word out. He starts toward the exit, then toward the head table, then toward me, then stops in the middle of the floor like a person on a frozen lake listening for cracks. His phone lights again. He reads, pockets it, and straightens like a man who knows a meeting has already been set without him. One investor will ask about the morals clause. Another will ask about risk. His board will schedule a vote. There is no speech that beats a vote. Guests pass them like a tide around two rocks. Eyes slide away. No one wants to be captured in the background of these frames. The photographer, now idle, lowers her camera and looks at the floor. Even the staff speaks softer, as if the room has lost a roof and they can feel the weather on their skin. Security opens a side door and begins to guide people out politely. No one fights to stay. The night ends without a last dance, without a toast, without a send-off car. It ends the way lies end, early, with everyone pretending to have somewhere else to be. I stand by my column and let the room empty itself, proof that silence can be louder than any band. Dad calls lawyers, not daughters. The morning after the wedding, he emails me a single line, "Let's de-escalate," and copies a family attorney who has never once asked me how I am. I do not reply. He follows with a longer message about reputational triage, about timelines, about moving past unfortunate optics. He uses the word optics as if it were whether we all must share. I forward his note to a folder called Record and keep my phone face down. By noon, he tries a different door. He tells a trustee that I have always been prone to dramatics, that what I did was a cry for attention. The trustee replies with 3 screenshots: the key card logs, the lobby still, the parking entries. Timestamps have no tone, they make feelings small. The talking point dies in his hands like a match blown out by its own smoke. He calls me again and I let it ring. Then he texts, "You've made your point." As if the truth were a point and not a structure, as if a daughter's safety in her own life were a debate to be scored. He asks to meet off the record. I answer with one sentence, "Please direct any concerns to the evidence on record." I hear nothing for an hour, then I hear from a reporter who says Dad told her the family is unified. I tell her the family is not a company and I am not a spokesperson. In the old days, people would have taken his voice over mine because it sat lower and moved slower. They would have called that authority. Now the room has seen receipts. Authority without trust is a microphone with the sound turned off. He keeps talking, fewer people listen. That night he drives past my block and parks under a streetlight. He does not get out. He texts, "We can fix this if you stop now." I look at the words and think about all the times stopping was the price of love in our house. Then I put my phone away. The world does not tilt when a man with a title is told no. The world just looks a little clearer. For the first time in my life, Dad's silence would mean more than his speech. He does not know how to give me that gift, so I give it to myself. I do not answer, I do not explain. I let the quiet do what his statements never could, draw a line he cannot move with a call. I block the family group chat. I mute the side threads where aunts say, "Let's talk," when they mean, "Let's smooth you back into silence." I set my phone to send unknown numbers straight to voicemail. I tell myself out loud, no secret meetings. No off the record. In this new perimeter, contact must be clean or it does not happen at all. I return the last items that tie me to their logistics: a spare venue badge, a laminated vendor list, a lanyard with my maiden name in serif gold. I slide each across the counter at the Harrington office and say, "Please remove my credentials from your system." The manager thanks me not because he takes a side, but because clear boundaries make his work easier. I walk out lighter by 3 plastic rectangles and 10 years of unpaid roles. I meet Ryan in daylight at the community garden where he asked me to marry him. We sit on a low wall. I hand him a key ring with 2 keys and say, "Thank you for the good that was real." He nods. He says he is taking a new job out of town, more field work, less meetings. We do not say we are sorry. We do not promise to stay friends. We nod for a long second that holds what we built and what we could not keep. Then he stands, and so do I. He says, "Be well, Soph." I say, "You too." It is not dramatic, it is honest. I change the locks on my apartment anyway, not because I fear him, but because a new perimeter should be literal at least once. I schedule therapy for Thursdays and mark it in my calendar as training because that is what it is, training my mind not to look for permission to exist. I cook simple food, I walk without headphones, I read a novel that has nothing to do with families or foundations, I let my body relearn a steady pulse, the social weather shifts. People who once looked past me at dinners now text me directly and use my name. Vendors greet me like a peer. A donor who used to speak to my mom through me writes, "I'm sorry," and leaves it there. I accept the apology because it is a sentence and not a negotiation. I do not seek reconciliation. I do not send an opening. I do not leave the door unlocked in case someone wants to try again. Silence used to mean I was erased. Now it means I am choosing not to spend one more minute inside their script. The old dynamic is non-transferable. They cannot name me anymore. I am the one who says my name, and I say it once, Sophia, then I get back to my life. Share your own moments of clean reversals in the comments. I see them all. If this helped you stand up straighter, pass it on to someone who needs it. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss new stories just like this one.